Chris, welcome to the Fl1ght podcast.
Good to be here, brother.
Mate, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
It's been a long time coming.
We've been trying to do this for a year.
Yeah, and my fault that we haven't been here, I think. You reached out to me a year ago.
Reached out to you a year ago.
Yeah.
And then we've been going back and forth. But in fairness to you, it's the right time now, right? And we're getting to this stuff with the launch of the business and the way you're growing.
Yeah, we've been... I own Floatworks with my business partner, Ed. And we have a place in Vauxhall, which we've been running for 3 years now. And we've been looking for our second site for over a year. And the past year has been quite... it's been a journey trying to find that site. We're nearly there now, so we have our new one in Angel. And we're 3 weeks out. The builders are in there at the moment, and we're launching at the end of July. So this is a great time to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah, mate, congratulations. That's great news, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was using one of the pods in the Vauxhall site. I'm trying to think how I was introduced to it in the first place. Actually, do you know what it was? I listened to a podcast that Joe Rogan did.
We get a lot of people coming in because they've listened to Joe Rogan. He is
free advertising.
Yeah, it's great for us. He introduces so many people to floating because he has a tank in his basement, and he talks about it all the time. The Joe Rogan Experience is one of, if not the most popular podcast in the world right now.
Probably the biggest, yeah.
And he floats very often and then talks to all of his guests about how powerful it is for him. So we get a lot of that traffic, people who are searching for floating in the UK. And, Floatworks has been around for over 25 years now because it was actually launched by Tim Strudwick, who's my business partner as well. And then when Ed and I took over 3 years ago, we purchased it and Tim came along as well, so he's involved. So what that means for us is we've got quite a reputable brand name and we're high on SEO, which is great because then anybody who's searching for floating and float tanks, if they hear about it from somebody like Joe Rogan, then they come in to float with us, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's such an amazing experience, man. I love doing it. So I think I've probably done about 10 now.
So how have they developed over the 10?
It's a good question, mate. I think it varies. The first 2 or 3 were like really, really powerful, just because I don't know whether it's just because it's a new experience and something I hadn't done before, and yeah, I got a huge benefit from them. And then I went in once and I had a cold. I struggled then.
Yeah.
And then I went another time when I was having a bit of a rough time, and it exaggerated the feelings because I just couldn't quiet my mind.
Yeah.
And then the most recent one, which was yesterday, was amazing, mate. As I said, I was lying there. We were talking about it just before we started. I was lying and I did not move like a muscle for the whole hour.
Yeah.
And just felt super relaxed. It was a weird sensation where I felt like my stress was almost like melting off my head.
Yep.
Which, have you had anything like that before?
Well, I've definitely felt stress relieving. That is one of the number one benefits of floating. So we talk about stress relief and relaxation and relief from anxiety as well.
Yeah.
We actually did a customer survey quite recently, and 60% of people said they come for that reason because we're all a little bit stressed at the moment, especially in London. So it's good to find tools and practices in order to get after that and find ways to be less stressed. And I think that floating is the ultimate for that. I don't think there is any better practice that can be done for stress relief.
What about meditation, or I suppose this is a form in itself?
Yeah, so they're very much one and the same. I was talking to Sabrina just before this about meditating, and a lot of people struggle with meditating. Everybody's talking about it now, which is fantastic. But I think it's been built up to, in some ways, this unattainable thing because people feel like they have to cross their legs and put their hands like this and burn incense and go deep into themselves. And I get a lot of people coming to me and saying, I don't know how to meditate, I find it really difficult, I can't switch off, etc., etc. So what floating does is provide a environment where there is no distractions. So you are forced, but in a good way, in a very gentle way, into a state of meditation, because all there is to do when you're in there is to be more aware. Floating used to be called, and still is called, sensory deprivation, because you are deprived of your sight and sound and touch and gravity. And what that does is it enhances your internal senses. So that's called interoception, where you become very, very aware of what's going on inside. So that's your breath and your heartbeat and any tension in your body. The floating moves you in there, because that is what it is. That's the environment that you're placed in. There's nothing else to do. And when you become really, really aware of that stuff, your heartbeat, your breath, then it's a lot easier to self-regulate, because you slow your breath down quite easily when you become aware of it. We're usually not aware of it, and therefore we breathe really shallow and really quick. But when you become aware, just naturally it just slows, and things start falling away as you become more aware of what's going on internally. So for those that struggle with meditation, this is just like, it's so easy. You just go and you lie down, and the rest kind of happens around you and for you.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so powerful.
It's great as well, mate. And I can vouch for it massively. Like, taking away sound, gravity, obviously with the whole point of the floating, removing all of that gravity from you. Any sight, you're in complete darkness as well. It's just so relaxing. Actually, there was times where yesterday I was feeling like a little bit twitchy, like, oh, I want to check my phone just because it's my natural instincts, or I want to get up and move. But then I brought myself back to just being like, just be really grateful for, you've got an hour here to do absolutely nothing. Just make the most of it. Just sit with it. And it's interesting to say it almost like forces you to do that.
Yeah.
But I've been doing transcendental meditation for about 3 or 4 years now, and I do it most mornings. I haven't done it this morning because I just think that, like, probably one of the things that people struggle with the most is it's just easier not to.
Yeah.
It's easier not to just go and sit there and say your mantra in your head over and over again for 15, 20 minutes.
That's the same with everything in life. Yeah. It's easier not to go for a run, not to do meditation, not to do all these good practices. But if you set the intention to do them, then it's easier. Yeah. Floating, you just need to set the intention to turn up, because when you're in the pods, then, like I said, there's nothing else to do. Should we just explain what floating is?
Yeah, mate, do. I think that would help.
Yeah, just before we get too deep.
Yeah.
So, floating is the practice of lying in around 12 inches of water, and the water is heavily saturated with Epsom salt. So there's about half a ton of Epsom salt in every pod. So we go through a lot of Epsom salt. Yeah. And it's so saturated that it's buoyant, and you float on top of the water. You float in a fiberglass tank. That's what we have at Floatworks. There are rooms as well that you can float in at other float centres. And and there's no sound, and there's no light, and there's no touch, as we said. You turn the lights off. There's no gravity weighing on your body, because it's almost like the ultimate memory foam mattress. Even when you're sleeping, there's gravity weighing on your body. You're being pushed into the mattress. When you're on this bed of water, there is no gravity, because it's perfect. And you lie there for an hour, ultimately. And every float is a bit different, and it's a bit different for each person. But it is just the most relaxing experience, in my opinion, possible in the world, because that is implied in what it is. Yeah. There is no distractions. And you most usually come out feeling extremely light, very clear. Some of your worries have drifted away. Your body feels very loose, because, like I said, there's been no gravity. You move into that perfect position. When we're moving around in the world, we're usually very tense. Yeah. No matter how much you want to do yoga or do practices that loosen you up, lots of us walk around quite robotic, and we sit down all day or at desks, which makes us very tight. And then when you're floating, you can just let each and every muscle just let go. And you could, and the Epsom salt as well is great for relaxing all of your muscles. It's rich in magnesium. Many people are deficient in magnesium, and it's a crucial building block for bodily function.
Mate, that's one of the biggest things I noticed. You know, as much as the benefit of the mind, you know, it's amazing for clearing your mind and making you feel less anxious, less stressed, that we were speaking about before. But I think for me, physically, even if you are stuck in your head and you're still thinking for the whole hour, physically when you get out, you still feel amazing. You still feel like lighter, like you said, my muscles stop aching. And someone who does quite a lot of exercise, I do get like sort of back. I've got a really bad old knee injury, which often causes like pain in my legs. So yeah, it's amazing just for that.
Well, and they're so interrelated as well. When our body feels stiff, then our mind feels stiff, and they play off one another. And then you can go a bit deeper and talk about how much sort of tightness we hold in our bodies because of what's happening in our minds as well. It might not just be because you're going to the gym. It might be because you're stressed, and that manifests itself in a tight back and shoulders, right? So they play off one another. They're very interrelated. Again, why floating is so powerful, it just lets it all go. Mind, body, maybe something deeper as well if you believe in that. Everything else can just let go and fall away for an hour. It's like the ultimate reset, which we need every now and again. It really helps us just get back into our bodies, reconnect, and then we can go again with the next bit of life. And then we can do a reset, and then we can go.
So how often do you float then?
I try to float twice a week.
Okay.
We're very busy at the moment, so I've been struggling to get an appointment. So I jump in when there's a cancellation. And I do try and stick to twice a week, even so. Like us all, I feel very busy sometimes, quite. They're the times when I try to really make sure that I get in and float. That might be a week when I do it 3 times rather than 2 times, because even though it's an hour or maybe an hour and a half total with shower and everything, they're the most important times to find a way to switch off. Otherwise you just start spinning out and losing track of yourself.
Yeah, you need that time to recalibrate afterwards. I think I took a while to come back around yesterday.
I agree. We have a chill out room where we recommend that people go have a cup of tea and reintegrate, whether that's just sitting or reading or journaling, but just before going back out into the world, into the madness, because it is a transition from nothingness to everything.
Yeah. Okay, amazing, mate. One of the things I noticed that I loved was that all of the people who work at Floatworks have T-shirts on with the Marcus Aurelius quote.
Yeah, I mean, we have different quotes, but one of them is Marcus Aurelius for sure.
Okay.
It's one of my favourite books is Meditations.
Meditations, yeah. It's something that I heard on, I think it was on the Tim Ferriss show, he was talking about meditations and has done a lot of times. With that said, I've got some Marcus Aurelius quotes that I'd like you to dissect for us.
I wasn't expecting this.
So the first one, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact.
Yeah.
And everything we see is a perspective, not the truth.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think if we relate it to today, then there is a lot to see and there's a lot to hear. And it can be very easy to get caught up in it, in the stories and the dramas, whether that's what other people are saying and doing or the stuff that's going inside your own head. But if you boil everything down, then there is only one truth, and that's inside of you. So, like, everything out there is noise.
Yeah.
And if you just find a way, and floating is one way, but meditating is another, yoga, nature, whatever works for you, just to find that time to go inwards, then you will know what the truth is. We were talking about this before.
Yeah.
The truth isn't out there, it's in here. And it is a practice to start coming in and figuring out what that is. They say the longest journey you'll ever take is the 12 inches from your head to your heart. And
wow.
I'm definitely experiencing that myself. It's a long journey, it's a lifetime's work. But taking that time to set the intention of moving into your heart and figuring out your own truth, for me, is the most amazing part of this human journey.
Yeah, that's an amazing message, mate. I love that. So,
I don't know if that...
No, mate, it's amazing. Do you know what? You sparked another thought in my mind there. Rather than talking about another quote, which we can maybe look at another one later on, but you did an amazing thing to follow your truth and to get on your path. And one of the big messages that we try and get across on Take Flight is about taking that leap of faith, following the journey, following the path, following your dreams and the things that essentially we believe that we're here to do. And it sounds like you've done that. So I'd love to hear a bit about your story, because I know you were in what we would consider a typical successful role within the business world in the city. Can you tell us a little bit about that story, a bit of the journey, and then what ultimately made you leave and take Fl1ght into where you are now?
Of course, yeah. So I was in banking for just under 10 years. I went there straight after university, and it's probably a typical story where I was attracted by the money and the idea of power. So building a career to get promoted and start managing people and managing clients and getting a corner office and acting like a big shot. And I did very well. So I progressed quickly because I had this ambition, which actually works quite well in that environment. If you are quite ruthless and just want to succeed, then you'll progress. You will. That's just how it's set up. But it was not long into that journey where I started to feel quite miserable. Only a couple of years in.
Really?
It took me 9 years to get out.
Wow.
So I was starting to feel very unhappy in my mid-20s. And I realised that the money wasn't making me happy, but I didn't know what the solution was. And I think this is quite an important message for people, because sometimes it takes time. You don't always know what to do. And I think we hear these messages from successful people who said they did this thing, and then you listen to it. And I do this myself. You listen to it, and it sounds quite grandiose. But in reality, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. And I went through a 9-year process of getting more and more miserable. I turned to alcohol and drugs and women and gambling and all these things that we do to try and escape. I had some good times, but I also got slowly more disconnected from myself. My physical health deteriorated, and my diet was awful as well. And my mental health continued to deteriorate. So, whilst I was continuing to progress, so I was getting promoted and changing companies and earning more money, and it was all looking great from the outside.
Yeah.
Like my mum said to me, because I was never open with my mum about this because I didn't want her to worry. And she said afterwards, like, I thought it was so good, I thought you were so happy, right? Because I put on a brave face. But inside, something's not right. And when something's off balance on the inside, then at some point it's going to come out. So it manifests itself in all sorts of physical problems where I had extreme fatigue, I was nauseous all the time, I had migraines, I was in and out of doctors and hospitals, getting all sorts of blood tests done, trying to figure out what was going on. It got to a stage where my girlfriend at the time was amazing, but she was starting to get worried. She was like, come to Greece with me. She was Greek. I want to get my doctor to look at you. So we went over to Greece, and I got all sorts of tests done, way more than I was getting done in the UK. This doctor tested everything. I remember him, he was amazing. he sat me down and we went to get the results. I was like, he's going to tell me what's wrong. He's going to give me some pills to make me feel better. And then he sat me down and he looked in my eyes. I remember it vividly. He's like, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have an illness. You don't have a disease. You're just, his words, you're just super stressed and you need to chill out and take some time and not burn the candle at both ends, right? But for me, that was a real turning point, because I'd been holding a false hope that there was actually, I was sick, I was ill, because that would explain why I felt so shit. And this, after I'd spoke to so many doctors, this one told me literally there's nothing wrong with you physically. I was like, oh, okay, well, it is all in my head then. And that was the first time I'd really accepted that I needed to change something dramatically in my life, because I honestly felt like I was going to die at times. I felt so bad, or like for years and years. I was like, this is not normal. I was incapacitated, sorry, can't get out, in bed for days. Really? I didn't want to go to social events because I just didn't feel like I had any energy. When that happens for so long, life gets pretty miserable.
Yeah.
But at this point, when he said it, I was like, oh, okay, well, I can do something about this then. So I remember on the way back, I downloaded Headspace, because I'd started to hear about it. It was around the time when it was getting popular. So I downloaded Headspace. I said, well, I'm going to try this meditating thing that everybody's talking about. I remember when I first did it, it was a very vivid experience. I just closed my eyes and focused on my breath. And as I did, I felt this pounding in my head, like all around. And I was like, that's amazing, because that's obviously been going on for 5 years and I haven't even noticed. Yeah. It's amazing what you can notice or not notice based on your awareness. Mm-hmm. So for the first time, I just closed my eyes and focused on my breath, and I felt this thing, like my head just going like that. I was like, okay, well, this is obviously a major cause of why I feel so terrible. That was a real turning point. And from that moment, things started to open up, because I obviously continued meditating, which has been very powerful. And around the same time, I got a bad back injury. So I was being silly in the gym and trying to lift too many weights. And so what happened there, again, it was a great gift, was when I was seeing my physio, he suggested that I tried floating, because I couldn't get over my injury because I was so stiff all the time, and he just wanted me to relax and let go. So on his advice, I went to float for the first time.
How long ago was that?
So that was about 4 years ago. I think I was 29.
Nice.
And that came at just the right time, because I went in for my back injury, and that was my first float, and I laid there and turned the lights off, and an hour later I woke up, came back into the world, and I just felt amazing, and I couldn't explain why. Like, it was no longer about my back, it was about this feeling of switching off. Yeah. Because I'd been so switched on in certain ways, in destructive ways, for a long time. And I came out of that and called Ed, who's my business partner. We'd been wanting to do something for a while because we both didn't like what we were doing. And I told him to go and float, and he did. He had a similar experience, and the rest is history.
Thank God. Imagine if he hated it. There's so many things I want to say about that. That's unbelievable. I mean, firstly, I'd say, what an amazing doctor that you went to see, because a lot of people will cover that up with medicine or penicillin or various other prescription drugs.
Yeah. No, he is. He's great. He's a great physio and a great friend. And I'd had some operations on my back, and I'd tried some drugs, and none of them had worked.
What had you done? Were you squatting or something?
I was bench pressing.
Oh, really?
putting a lot of pressure through my thoracic spine, and I
Like lifting you back up.
Yeah, I damaged the nerves in my thoracic spine, so I had a few operations which were completely unsuccessful. Actually got a lot of bad advice around that time about what to do. And I'm just getting over it now, so this was 4 years ago. But it again, it's been another painful journey, but the rewards are amazing.
Yeah.
So I had a year of bad advice operations and things of that nature. Started floating, which really helped me tune into my body, because that's one thing that floating does. It makes you realise everything, because you've only got your body in there. There's nothing else to focus on. So you notice any tension that you're holding and you can let it go. So that's been really powerful. And then with my physio, I basically rebuilt my back and posture and mobility. So that was about a year of Pilates to start with.
Really?
Which was very slow and a little bit boring sometimes, but so important, because it just takes you right back to square one. I'd played football for all my life and sat at a desk for a lot of time. So I wasn't really moving like a normal human being. Everything was a bit stiff, and I didn't understand my kinetic chain, right? So Pilates was a great foundation, and then since then have moved into yoga and seeing a personal trainer to rebuild very, very slowly. And I'm now at a stage where I'm feeling loose and healthy and happy and in tune with my body.
You look it as well, mate.
Yeah, no, I feel probably better now than I've ever felt. And I'm very, very grateful for that, because it has been a long journey. But, I heard you with Louis Blake the other day. Through that suffering comes the rewards.
Yeah.
And it has taught me a lot of lessons.
Yeah. Interesting, mate. I'd like to talk more later on about some of the lessons that you've learned and perhaps some of the realizations that you've had while you've been in the float tank.
Sure.
But just quickly, before you mentioned football there, I'm an ex-footballer as well. It brought me a lot of joy. And just a very quick shout out to one of my friends from my childhood, Alex Cortis, who you're friends with.
Oh, Alex. Yeah, amazing.
So this is funny, mate. So
you two look a bit similar, actually. Have you had that before?
Might have. He'll be happy with that, I think. But after he listened to the podcast, especially at the beginning, and messaged me, I was like, oh, you should speak to my mate. He's just starting a business in London. I was like, okay, like, tell me who it is, like, tell me a bit about him. And he told me the story, and I was like, you're kidding me. I've already done like 4 sessions in the float tank. That's amazing. And I'd already thought, like, I would love to get you on, because a lot of this stuff is about peak performance and how can people improve themselves day to day. And obviously, for me, this is a practice that people should definitely look into and have a go with. So that's the first thing. Quick shout out to him.
Shout out to Alex.
But mate, the follow-up question's that really non-related whatsoever, but interested to know what the motivation was behind you lifting those big heavy weights, because I recently did I've had conversations with this a lot recently, but like for me, mate, I used to lift as heavy as I could, chest and bis, very much ego-based exercises, whereas lately I've shifted to do more exercise that makes me happy and can sustain me more long term. So I just, when you were saying that, it just triggered another thought.
Same. I mean, I know I look super skinny now, and I probably have been for most of my life, but all ego. It was coming up to summer, and I think we were going to Ibiza, and I wanted a six-pack and to have big arms. So I was just lifting as much as possible. And as I said, the work we went through earlier to sort my posture out, my posture was terrible when I was doing this. So you can imagine bad posture, bad form, heaviest weights you can lift is only going to result in one thing. And now when I go to the gym, I see so many people who are doing things like I used to do it, and I'm like, oh, I really want to go and say something, but it's not my place, unfortunately. But the past 2 months, I've been working with Lisa, who's my friend and yoga teacher at Try Yoga, shout out. And she's really helped me tune into my body, more so than I've ever done before. And that can seem really abstract, 'cause I've heard people say stuff like that in the past when I wasn't doing it, and it's like, oh, what do you mean? I think I'm doing it, but I'm not sure. But for some reason, the last 2 months, I've just been able to focus on my breath a lot more, focus on each sensation in my body and just feel how it all flows. And it's been really special, and I'm now addicted to yoga.
Really?
And I'm doing it in the morning and in the evening every
Every
day.
day?
Yeah, because I can't get enough of it at the moment.
Wow. Another thing Joe Rogan talks about a lot.
Yeah.
You said something earlier that I picked up on, but I have no idea what it is. You said the kinetic chain.
Kinetic chain. Well, physios and PTs talk about it. It's basically just that when you move one part of your body, you don't just move that in isolation. Everything works together, right? Everything in your body is connected.
Yeah.
So if you go to lift something off a shelf, actually it's the whole chain that's getting it. Whereas some people might just go like that and pull it down, and that's what causes injuries. Because you're isolating when you shouldn't be isolating. You should be using your whole body.
Nice. So that's when they talk about like body weight exercises or full body movements is the way to train.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting.
Same stuff.
Yeah, it's like my injury from football was my MCL, my meniscus in my right knee, which then affected like my left hip and like my back and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so. It can be weird, when one thing's hurting. It's not actually, a lot of the time it's not actually that thing that's injured, it's something else. But we don't have the experience to understand that. That's seeing a good physio or PT can be really powerful to understand that stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Sounds like I need to see her. Was it Lisa?
Lisa's my yoga teacher.
Lisa,
okay,
here we go.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Okay, cool. So, mate, what I want to talk about now, before we go into some of the more deep, meaningful, spiritual stuff, is just your process of being in your banking job. How bad did it have to get? Why do we have to get to the depths of despair and depression before we actually act? And then what was that process of going, right, I've got, let's say, X amount of money in a bank. That's given me the confidence to be able to actually leave this world and start something. And you know, a new business is something that's difficult to build. So what was that part of your life like?
So I don't think we necessarily need to get to the depths of despair in order to make a change. That was just my journey. It was what I needed to go through to make a big change. But everybody's different. We're all on our own unique journeys. Again, we were talking about this before. I think a lot of people are just, when you grow up as a human being, especially in this world, you get conditioned to be quite asleep, ungrateful. You just go through life and do what you're told to do or what society tells you to do. And you end up in a place, so not everybody, but a lot of people end up in a place where they're unfulfilled in some way, shape or form, because they're not really asking themselves the questions about who they are and what will make them happy. So some people find it gently through starting meditation, for example, but for me, I had to go to the depths of despair. And that just seems to be a trend for me. Like when I did ayahuasca, I had to go into the darkest, deepest place in order to see the light, right? That's, for some reason, that's my journey. But
I think that's a lot of people, by the way.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people start the process of figuring out who they really are when something bad happens. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I think, mate, my very quick example, when you carry me your story, is like this would never have started if I hadn't have been in a really dark place where you have to look at yourself and say, I have to make a change, like you were saying before. Like, if I don't do something different now, this is my life. Yeah. So what can I do? Suffering is grace, as Ram Dass says.
So yeah, it, unfortunately that does happen for a lot of people, but it's actually fortunate because it helps us take the next step. And what was the second part of the question?
So just about like what was that thing that actually made you go, right, I'm quitting banking and starting Floatworks?
It felt quite easy to me once I'd started the process, once I'd meditated for the first time and realised there was more to life. It just opened my eyes to the fact that no amount of money was ever going to make me happy doing what I was doing. Where I was at, I could have worked for 10 years doing what I was doing and bought some properties and retired, or started investing and stuff like that. And I thought about it. And I have friends who talk like that, who are in that environment and hate it. And they're like, 10 more years. And for me, as soon as I had, realised how deeply unhappy I was and realised how precious life is, then I knew that a drastic change had to happen literally overnight. And that's why Floatworks happened so quickly from that moment in time, because Ed felt similar, who's my business partner. And from the moment when we floated to the moment when we opened was like 6 months, and 3 months of that was building the space. So it happened super quickly because we just, I guess some of it is intuitive. When you do start to open up a little bit, then things unfold a bit easier, and you have a sense of the right direction at this point.
Yeah.
But it's so unique to everybody. So it's only my journey, and it's really hard to lay out like a blueprint.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't exist.
What do you think it gave you the bravery to actually do it, though? For your example specifically.
It's a good question. I think the alternative was so horrific that I actually didn't need to be brave. I wouldn't even say I was brave. I could foresee what I was going down and towards, and it was not pretty.
Yeah.
It was desperate.
And where are you now then? Because I find this now, right, when I'm in conversations like you are, right, with people who are probably still on your old path, doing the thing that you moved away from. How can you sit in conversations like that and, being worthy is the worst thing for me. You sit there and you go,
of course,
you're not enlightened yet, or you haven't realised this isn't the way. But how can you look at other people who might be doing that?
Yeah.
Do you ever get like a bit of twang of anxiety to be like, I could have still been earning that much money or had that house or whatever?
Oh, no. No. Quite the opposite. If I hear stories about somebody making loads of money or getting promoted in that environment, then I'm happy for them if they're happy, and I'm grateful that it's not me. Because I remember how I felt.
Yeah.
And I can draw on that.
That's good.
And I'm grateful to understand that feeling, because that can give me empathy.
Yeah.
And it means that I won't go back.
Yeah. Amazing. And that's all through floating, guys. You can float and get this much clarity.
Yeah. Floating is my foundational tool to help keep all of this together and continue to grow and learn the lessons. But then there are so many other tools as well.
So we mentioned earlier about hearing some of your realizations while you've been in the float tank.
Yeah.
What are some of the big lessons you've learned or sort of messages you received while you've been in there?
So I think I'd reframe it, because there is a little bit of a misconception around you're going to float and receive some really profound message. And of course that can happen, but it's not the standard procedure. Floats are usually very gentle and the message is very subtle. And that's a good thing. I've been learning myself in recent times that sometimes the subtlest messages are the most powerful. You can turn the notch by half a degree and see a whole new world in front of you, rather than having to try and flip it on its head all the time. So I think I break down my floating practice into a few phases. When I initially started, a lot of it was about my back and my physical body and my headaches. So I was just in there, just breathing and trying to just relax it all a little bit, which was amazing. It was very, very powerful and really helped me through my recovery. And then I think I moved more into a bit of a spiritual phase, you might call it, where I was going inwards and trying to understand who I am and what it all means. And then most recently, over the past year or so, I've really been using it for rejuvenation or to help sleep, because I've been working very, very hard because I love what I do. I think this year I've had 1 day off in 6 months, and that's my choice. I love it. But you do get burned out and tired sometimes. And me floating twice a week, I just come out feeling refreshed. It can be as simple as you feel a bit tired when you go in and you come out not feeling tired. That's really powerful, because we know when you feel good in yourself, you can enact so much change in the world, and you can be the person that you want to be, and you can be happy.
Yeah.
Literally, being a bit tired to not being tired has a huge effect.
Oh, massive, man. I can speak to that as well, because you spoke about fatigue earlier. That was the thing that drove me into a lot of this self-discovery, was getting chronic fatigue, and kind of only just at the end of that, really, as of the beginning of this year. And the way that you react to different things, the emotions that come up in different situations when you're tired versus when you're rested or rejuvenated or whatever, you can be a different person.
100%. That's what I've been realising as well. So I see floating as a practice rather than a one-shot profound experience. I think that's a misconception. It doesn't mean you have to do it twice a week, because it takes an hour and a half total, and sometime and maybe you don't have the money to do it twice a week. But if you can do it like once a month and have it scheduled in to your calendar, and try and do perhaps the same day, same time, so you get into a little bit of a routine. You
do a really good subscription model as well, don't you, which I did last year, which was you pay monthly or whatever, and you just book it in for that month, and you haven't won a month, and it's all taken care of, reducing as much admin as possible, which I thought was
build
good.
your life around your float is my recommendation.
Okay.
Because I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to sell floating. I'm saying it because actually it can have such a positive impact on your life if you have these practices. Again, floating is one of them, just scheduled in. We tend to schedule in everything else and then try and build our mindfulness practices around that. And I would suggest flipping that on its head, in order to, even if your only goal is to be like the optimum version of yourself, right? I'd flip it around. Put your mindfulness in and then build your life around that, and your productivity will go through the roof.
Mate, I love that message. And do you know, one of the things that stood out most of the things you've said today already is around when you first did your meditation, you felt that sort of throbbing in your head. The first thing I noticed yesterday was, even though I am doing meditation, it's a different kind of relaxation because it's full body. Got in there and I was like, Jesus, I'm in pain. Again, this has probably just been the way that I've been feeling for weeks without noticing.
Yeah, that awareness. And through floating, you get super aware. You also take that awareness outside of the pod. So, you could go a month not really noticing that you're stiff and it'll be building up. You go in there, you become more aware of it. That awareness then carries on, and you're like, oh, okay, right, I can just, let me loosen up a bit. Let me make sure I do my meditation, let me do a bit of yoga, whatever it may be. Floating carries on way after the float tank.
Yeah. And the dreams that night are always good. I find. Do you get that as well?
No, I can't say I'm a big dreamer.
Oh, really?
When I sleep, actually, I'm quite jealous of people who dream, because obviously I do dream every now and again, and I love it when it happens. So I am jealous of people who dream every night, because it sounds awesome.
I have it every night, mate. Every night I have some sort of...
Have you practiced lucid dreaming?
I've tried, man.
Yeah.
So this is something that, it's funny you bring that up. This is something that I used to do when I was a teenager without even realising I was doing it. And then we were speaking before we started recording, my breathwork coach, Rebecca Dennis, was talking to me about it. And she was saying, oh yeah, you can control this stuff. And Tim Ferriss talks about it as well. You can control lucid dreaming. In fact, Tim Ferriss, this is where I think it gets a little bit grey, but he said that in his dreams, so for people listening who don't know what lucid dreaming is, it's the ability to take control of your dream, essentially, and push yourself in a certain direction within that story. So he used to, apparently, when he was at college, train in his dreams as a wrestler against the number one wrestler in the world, right? So apparently your brain learns that, and it has the ability to take on that skill, and that is almost like an official training session. So then he'd go into his college wrestling matches and be better because he'd been lucid dreaming. I don't know.
I don't doubt that. I think it's a deeper form of visualization. I must say it's really hot in here. It's like a sauna.
It is very hot. It's part of the practice of mindfulness.
Just in case I'm sweating on camera.
We're being aware of the temperature. So, man, something you've spoken about a lot is happiness. And you seem to be a very, very happy person. Even from when I just met you there, your energy is great. You've got a really positive vibe about you. What is your definition of happiness, and how can we better recommend people find their own version of happiness?
So that can go in many different ways. That is a deep question. I think it is the most important thing in life to be happy, because in this human existence that we're in, you just want to be out there smiling and laughing and joking, right? There's nothing more important than that, with your friends and your family. So trying to find a way to be happy is important, in my opinion. I believe it's a practice. You need to set the intention to be happy and then work towards it, like anything else in life. And it's a different, I know this is a cop-out, it's a different journey for everybody because we're all very unique. There are, of course, some common themes. And for me, I think there's a few important things. It is to not be who people want you to be.
Yeah.
Which, again, sometimes you don't realise that you're being who other people want you to be until you realise, because we're conditioned. Even, your parents, for example, have the best interests for you, but they're conditioning you to be who they want you to be, right? As I will do with my kids, right? That's part of the journey. And then when you grow up into an adult, you have to unwind all of that stuff. The parents, school, the media, the social media, to figure out who you are. And that's not easy. I don't want anyone to think that that's an easy thing to do. But to be aware of it and to try and move into that place, however long that takes, that's important. And that could mean anything. That could mean you're in banking, right? There's no problem with banking if you feel like you should be a banker. But it could also mean that you move to the Himalayas and sit on top of a cliff and meditate. Anything. But you have to move into your truth. And again, you have to be patient whilst doing that, because it needs to happen in its own time. You can't if you try and force these things, you're just into the trap again. You're trying to force yourself into a certain version of who you think you should be, rather than who you actually are.
It's so hard to distinguish the two, though, isn't it?
It is. And this is where it just comes down to the intention and the practice. If you just you can set an intention right now to, over the course of my life, I'm trying to be me. I'm truthfully me, completely me, and not anybody else. Then you will start over time to figure out what that means. So for me, that's really important. Patience, as I said, I think is really important. You're not going to go from being unhappy to happy overnight because you decide to. It's a long game. You need to see it as a lifelong journey and not a one-year journey. Otherwise you'll get frustrated. Frustrated is just going to make you unhappy.
But it starts with that first decision to change, though, right?
Absolutely.
But it's a long process.
It is.
That's where you're talking about that expectation setting again, right? So I am going to be happy now, but it's going to be a journey. It might take me a couple of years. It might take me a few months.
And you'll keep thinking you've got it, and then you'll realise that you haven't.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that. I was literally having a conversation about this the other day. Whereas when I first went to therapy, did some cognitive behavioural therapy, and I did like 10 sessions or something, came out of it, I was like, I'm done, I'm fixed, I'm healed. But I didn't realise, I was probably happy for 3 or 4 months after that, thinking it was all good, and then a load of stuff came up again, and I was like, I didn't realise really that was just the tip of the iceberg, and then there was so much more stuff to dissect after that.
And it's exciting. Try and see it as an exciting game, because there's no right or wrong. And each time that we think we've got it and we don't, and it shakes us a little bit or we get unhappy for a bit, that's the next opportunity for growth. Each step is a stepping stone towards where we're going. We're all going to the same place. We're getting out of here together. We're all going up the mountain and we're taking slightly different paths. Yeah,
amazing, mate. I love that. Yeah, that's great. Well, something I did the other day, I was like, I was having a bit of a rough day, and I was like, right, what can I do? Because again, this podcast talks a lot about practices, things we can do. Obviously, that's why the float tanks are so amazing. But I wasn't near a float tank, didn't have a session booked in. So I was like, I'm going to take my dog on a walk, but before I do that, I'm going to do some Wim Hof breathing, and before I do that, I'm going to have a freezing cold shower. So I did all these things.
You got to tell me about freezing cold showers. It's the one thing I can't do.
Really?
I'll keep trying.
I'm surprised by that, because everything you're talking about
is
is perfect for it. The patience, the knowing it's not going to happen overnight. You build your tolerance up to the
I'm obviously not ready.
You are, man. After today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't been ready up to this point.
Yeah.
I think I associate showers with comfort. Because it's lovely to have a warm shower. So,
but you still get your warm shower, right? Shall I tell you how you should try it tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have your typical shower, your natural, like whatever you do hygiene-wise when you're in the shower, right? You have your wash your hair, whatever. As you're coming to the end of that practice, this is how I do it. Yeah. You start doing your Wim Hof breathing. So 30 deep diaphragmatic breaths.
Yeah.
When you get to the end of your 30th breath on the exhale, hold at the end of your exhale. So all the air is breathed out, then you hold your breath. And the reason that benefits us is because we're putting acute stress on our body, and we're training our body to better manage those symptoms. So then you're already feeling a little bit of like, I want to breathe now, I want to breathe. So to add to that, crank your shower to cold.
Do you turn it all away straight away?
No, I don't do that. I probably go about 70% of the way.
Okay.
But my shower is one that, like, as soon as you turn it a little bit cold, it goes all cold, but then it goes kind of not too as cold.
It's that turning, because you're in control of the pain, that I can't bring myself to do it. I'm good in plunge pools.
Plunge pools are the best.
Because you jump in.
Yeah.
And you're almost out. Once you've stepped over the edge, you're out of control.
If you know a plunge pool in London, mate, please let me know.
Yeah, I'll go to Banya, number 1, in Old Street. So we should go sometime. 100%,
mate. I'd love to. That'd be brilliant. Yeah, I love the plunge pool. I've only done it once. I did it it was in the Champneys in the spa somewhere. But yeah, it was amazing. So yeah, crank it to cold. Hold your breath for as long as you can. I can go for about a minute and a half now with holding my breath and the cold water coming on. And I gradually just make it colder and colder and colder until it's like completely cold.
All right, I'll try it. Might try it after this. I'm so hot. Yeah. I'll try it tomorrow, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Mate, please do. Let us know. And people who want to try it as well, let us know. But the interesting thing I find about all these practices is once your body feels it and starts to acclimatise and get used to it, I crave that. If I sometimes forget and I turn it off because I'm in a rush or whatever, and my mind's somewhere else, I turn the shower off. I'm like, I didn't do the cold exposure. Turn it back on, because my body actually wants it now.
So you've become addicted to something which benefits you, which is very powerful.
Yeah.
You've changed your brain patterns to crave something which is beneficial, which is great. We can do that through habit.
Yeah. How else can we do it?
Practice, habit, setting the intention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, floating. If you start doing it once a month and then you don't do it for 2 months, you'll start to crave it.
Yeah.
Which is great. Better to crave these things than drugs, alcohol, etc.
Yeah. Amazing, mate. So, to get back onto that story, right? It's not even a good story now. We've had the best bit of that chat. So anyway, I took the dog for a walk, and I left all my tech at home, and I was just out for like an hour and a half. It was probably only like a half an hour walk, but I was just like really slow when I was at the park chilling, and like just had an urge to climb a tree.
Okay.
So I just climbed the tree.
Like a child.
Like a child, mate. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should generally be more like children. We forget to play.
Yeah.
And play is creative and brings us happiness. That's the reason why we do it when we're children, when we're not bogged down by all the bullshit. We spend all of our time playing. We also spend all of our time feeling our emotions, so either laughing or crying. We get conditioned out of that because we get taught not to play. When you're an adult, you have to be serious.
Yeah.
You have to get a job and pay your taxes and sort your pension out and pay your bills and all these things. And we get taught to cover up our emotions.
Is that what the banking world did to you?
Yeah. But but also just life. Life. Yeah. We're not encouraged to... it's becoming better now. But I know when I was growing up, if you cried as a male specifically, but I'm sure female as well, you were weak or weird or strange or... when you need to feel these things. If you're upset, you should cry. If not, what's happening to those emotions? They're going somewhere in your body, and they're storing.
Yeah.
And it's going to come out at some point. Or not, it's just going to hold you back. So you should feel these things. And if you're and we don't celebrate our successes and happiness enough. If you're a child and you get some sweets, you're over the moon, you go around dancing and singing, right?
Yeah.
We don't do that either. So
Yeah.
we should act more like children,
Yeah.
because that's what life is all about.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. It's interesting to know where the cutoff would be. I'll tell you something that came up for me then again. It's like, this is probably my best example of this. I still have this vivid image of the thing that happened to me. So I finished playing football for injury in America. I came back, tried to play a little bit semi-pro over here, didn't work out. Got a job with an amazing organisation, Johnson & Johnson, like global business. Probably your conventional version of success, right? Outside looking in, he's come back from America, but he's got a good job.
Yeah, everybody thought you were doing really well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Came in and we were doing they had a really rigorous training schedule, which was really good, great place for your first job and all the rest of it. But I came in to do like the exam part of this, and at the end of the day, it had been a good day, everything had gone quite well. At the end of the day, I had like a quick fire Q&A on like the product set and some stuff around health and all this sort of stuff. Sat down, and just because I was still in the habit of, I'd been in football changing rooms and on the pitch, and that was my persona and my kind of just who I was, right? Sat down and I just did this stupid like David Brent shoot like that, right?
I love that.
Didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
But then the feedback was, you did great on the day, your demo was good, your pitch was good, but you just weren't taking it serious enough.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of stuck with me. I was like, what the fuck do you mean I'm not taking it serious enough?
What does that even mean?
Yeah. So from that, mate, I'd be interested to know, like, how do you kind of give that message in Floatworks?
I like to think that we create a culture where people can share their personalities. It's very important to us, and I believe we do achieve this. We're always gathering feedback from our community, and honestly, like 80% of the feedback is about how amazing the team are, and I take very little credit for that. We just have amazing people who love floating. They love introducing people to floating. Yeah. And they love working together. We went to Fl1ght Park last week together, which was a great day out. And we encourage people to show their personalities. We obviously have some structures in place, but we don't want to become too robotic, because if you come in for a float for the first time, you want to be greeted by a human.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, so floating is quite unique, but I guess we're close to a spa, and a lot of spas that you go in are quite robotic. Like they're trained to stand up so straight and just take you and not really say anything, right? For me, and I think for a lot of people, it doesn't really make you super comfortable. You feel most comfortable when you're in the presence of a warm, friendly person. Yeah. So that's what we try and encourage. And I think that works really well for the floating journey, because that person ends up going into a float tank just feeling like they're at home, I guess. Yeah.
Mark can speak to that as well. We were talking about Sabrina earlier being introduced to it, because people do go in quite anxious, like,
of course.
Fucking hell, like, I'm going in like a tank and think about being stuck in there or whatever. Yeah. But that feeling of like being put at ease by the guys was definitely there. And I think that when you walk in, again, when I spoke with you, the energy, you can feel that on people. Everyone's so chill, and I go in there like operating on such a high frequency, like, and everyone's so relaxed.
We do get a lot of people coming in with some form of stress and anxiety because of what floating is. So we love that. Like I said, I think floating is such a powerful tool. There are, bit of a tangent, but just got me thinking about anxiety. There's some amazing research happening right now.
Really?
The results are incredible, where they're showing anxiety levels that they can measure through the EEG brainwaves. Anxiety levels, the parts of the brain which are responsible for like our fight or flight mode, are just so dampened down during and after floating that they've just received the first government-funded grant for long-term study into floating, because the results are so profound. Wow. So, yeah, we get a lot of people in who, feel like they need something because they're stressed and anxious. We're very grateful for that, because we want to provide that space for people to feel like they can come and relax. And that happened before floating, during floating, and after floating. And that's what we're trying to create at Floatworks. Just that place where you can almost step out of the world for a period of time before getting back into it.
Yeah, amazing. So you mentioned ayahuasca earlier. I can't speak with you today about touching on that very briefly. Just keen to understand like where that was on your journey, why you did it, and you spoke about going to the depths of despair. What was your experience?
Yeah, so I mean, we could talk about it for a long time, so I think we should keep it at a high level. For me, it was after we'd started Floatworks, really moved on to a different phase of my journey where I was going very inwards. I was a lot happier already because I'd set up a business which had a lot of meaning to me and to other people, so that immediately, my happiness levels went from there to there. And then it was more of a phase of trying to understand who I am, which is a very deep question. Ayahuasca is one tool of many. I definitely don't recommend it for everybody because it's a very profound experience. But for me, some of the most important lessons that I've ever learned have come through being part of those ceremonies. It taught me to open my heart, to love people, to love myself, which have been very, very important lessons. It's helped me through my fear of my own mortality, which has released a lot and made me a lot freer and looser in the world. And I know it's a very popular item right now of discussion and lots of people are doing it, and I think that's great. There are other plant medicines that people are using, like iboga, and they're now... This is also related to, there's a lot of research going on now with psilocybin and MDMA, especially in the US for anxiety and depression. So these psychedelics, although they're all a little bit different, seem to be creating quite positive and profound shifts in human consciousness towards people being happier than they were before. And I think that's an amazing thing to explore. But it's only if you feel drawn to it, because like I said, there are non-medicinal tools as well that are just as powerful. Meditating, floating, yoga, nature, relationships, all of these things. They're all one and the same, really.
Yeah, I sometimes think that the psychedelic route is for the... This is not a generalised statement at all, but for the more impatient. Like for me, I'm thinking, I want the answers now. Let's go and take some mushrooms or go and do an ayahuasca ceremony.
I agree, because that's me as well. I wasn't ready to do a 10-year meditation practice to figure out a few of these things. But that just meant it was the right thing for me. And we all have to figure out what the right thing for ourselves is.
Amazing. Okay, mate. So we do the same 3 questions at the end of every episode.
Okay.
So the first one of these is there anything you've discovered or come across recently that you're particularly excited about?
Yes.
Okay. What is it?
Breathing.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sounds quite basic. We all breathe all the time, hopefully, whilst we're alive. But I've been studying breathwork. I'm actually doing my course in breathwork at the moment to be a practitioner.
What kind of breathwork is it?
So it's called conscious connected breathing. It's different to Wim Hof. It's more of a more focus on consciousness and emotions, and rather than the physical. But both are very powerful. I've done Wim Hof method as well. I do breathwork sessions. I participate and I teach them. However, what that has taught me recently, which I'm very excited about, is how to be in control of my breath day to day in each moment. So, again, like yoga, I was like, when I started meditating, I started being aware of my breath. That was kind of phase 1. And now I'm doing breath practices throughout the day. So, for example, if I'm walking to the tube, then I'll focus on my inhales being 5 seconds and my exhale being 5 seconds. So that's 10 seconds, 6 breaths a minute. And that's known as a therapeutic zone, which has a lot of healing properties, and there's some good research behind that as well.
6 seconds.
So 10 seconds for the inhale and the exhale, which is 6 breaths per minute.
Oh, 6. Okay. Nice.
You'll notice, I recommend people do it at the next opportunity for like 10 minutes. It's hard because your mind keeps getting distracted like it does with meditating, and you keep having to bring it back. But if you do that for 10 minutes, you'll get to the end of 10 minutes and you'll feel so much more relaxed than you did before. So that's one example. The other example is when I do feel stressed sometimes, as we all do, and I'll just be aware of my breath. But because when we get stressed, we breathe really shallow into here, I become aware of my breath going into my lower back and just try and direct it there. And again, that has such a hugely positive impact and means that I don't spin out with this stress and anxiety or whatever's happening. It just helps me bring it back. Yeah. It just means that I manage to stay on this even keel, which means I can operate like I want to in the world.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I love the breathing example, it's great.
Yeah, I recommend anybody who hasn't studied breathing to do so, because it's the one constant in life.
Yeah.
You know, it's the first thing we do when we're born.
Yeah.
We take a big inhale, like when we're introduced to the world, to try and get all the life in and figure out what the hell's going on. And then it's the last thing we do before we die. It's the ultimate surrender. The final breath is, you know, that's it. And then between the first and the last, we breathe about 1 billion times if you live to 80, right? So each of those billion breaths is an opportunity to be more aware. And you could say an opportunity to start again, like your first breath. For the most part, we take it for granted and we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
But when you learn to tune into that, and there's many different ways to do that, you can start to use the breath to your advantage. So imagine having this tool which you've always had and you never realised, and now you can start to use it. That's how I see the breath.
Amazing, man. Such a good one. All right, nice. So the second of these 3 is, if you had to give everybody who's listening one piece of advice of a practice or routine to incorporate into their lives that's going to help drive their performance forward, what would that thing be? I think I might know what you're going to say.
So obviously breathing, but now I need to think of something else. A practice in life. So because of where I'm at right now, I'm going to have to say yoga.
Okay.
Again, yoga can sound intimidating to some people, right? Because you imagine people standing on their heads and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But yoga is very basic when you boil it down. It's just being in tune with your body. You can get... when I'm doing it at home, I use a YouTube channel called Yoga with Adriene, which has great yoga content, and it's super simple.
Yoga with Adriene.
Yoga with Adriene.
Okay, cool.
And moving the body regularly keeps us fresh, keeps us active, keeps the mind clear, and especially if you're sat at a desk all day, then I really recommend to find ways to be loose, and right now for me that's yoga.
Nice.
Of course, I have to caveat that with floating.
Yeah.
I thought that would be too obvious. Yeah. Okay, so I will say floating as well then, if that wasn't obvious from everything that we've said before. I would suggest, again, some people don't have access to floating because in the UK there's still not a great deal of places, only in some major cities and some other odd areas. So if you have access to floating, then I would, of course, recommend doing it once a month. I think that is, there's nothing I would recommend more, obviously. And if you can do it more than that, say once a week, then I think you'll see very, very profound, dramatic shifts in your life.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, mate, and the last of these three is, what's the key differentiator between the version of yourself who went on to have the success that you've had?
Yeah.
You came through the banking episode, all the darkness, and you've launched a fantastic business with Floatworks, and you seem like you're on the right path. That's something that you're passionate about and what you're here to do. And the version of yourself who would still be in banking, would still be living that life.
So I think there's probably a couple of things. Meaning is very, very important. I had no meaning before that, and that has great meaning to me. I'm really excited about offering it to more people. We're expanding in 3 weeks, and then we're looking to open 3 more centres next year. So that
all in London, or?
Yeah, all in London.
Nice.
Yeah, initially, so that we can provide that space for people. So that's so meaningful for me. We touched on the team earlier. I love building a team, creating an environment where people can be the best they can be. It can be challenging to manage people and work with people, but the upside of that, when you see them developing and becoming what they can be, is incredibly meaningful to me, and I love that part of it as well. Yeah. And then, of course, outside of work, with breathing, yoga, my relationships, journaling, meditating, all of these things, I do them all because they're important to me, and not because I'm trying to escape from myself. I now want to lean into myself and realise how amazing I am. And I think more people should do that. It can sound that we're taught that that's an arrogant thing to say, that I'm amazing, but actually I think it's super important, because we all are. We're all doing the absolute best we can do with the tools that we've got. And I think we, at least me, but I know, having spoken to lots of other people, that we beat ourselves up quite a lot. I should be doing more, I should be different, I need to change this. When, for me, the most important step is to realise that you're ready for the cheesiness, that you're already perfect. You are. You always have been, because you've been doing the absolute best you can do. You're in the perfect place that you need to be in right now. And actually, what happens when you realise that you're perfect is all of the worries fall away. That allows you to become your true self. Yeah, you grow and develop from then, but you do it from a place of loving yourself. Because trying to grow from a place of not loving yourself doesn't work. That has to be the first step.
Amazing, man. What a great way to end the podcast. Mate, it's actually funny, one of the first realizations I had in the float tank was that I am enough. Like, lying here naked in a float tank with nothing here, like, I'm not closing a deal, I'm not starting a podcast, I'm not doing anything, I'm just lying here with nothing, and I'm still enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, thank you so much,
Thank
mate.
you.
I loved it. Cheers, Chris, my brother.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.